Hey everybody, in this video we're going to take a look at this poll for Ohio. We haven't had that much out of the Buckeye State in the past few months, but this one from Marist College has Trump in the lead for president as well as Brown in the lead for Senate. So we're going to take a look at the poll, the pollster, and how much we should care about this particular poll. Now I know some people might take issue with some of the polls that I cover, but that's what we do here. We cover the polls. Sometimes they have your candidate up, they have them down. Sometimes the poll might be an outlier or it might be an aggregate. It all depends on what else is going on and if I think the race is worthwhile enough to be able to fit in. It is just one poll. You don't have to put a lot of stock into it, but we can at least go through it and see what it shows. So the headline is Trump is up by 7, Brown is up by 5. Let's go down a little bit further. We've got Trump at 48%, Biden is at 41, and that does include leaners. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is at 5%, Jill Stein, Chase Oliver are at 1, Cornel West is at less than 1. Among those who will definitely vote, Trump is 49, Biden is 43. Independent voters are breaking for Trump 43 to 37, 7 go for Kennedy. In the 2020 exit poll, Biden was at 48, Trump was at 48 with those independents. Among those in Ohio that have an unfavorable impression of both Trump and Biden, Trump is at 31, Biden and Kennedy are both tied at 18. Now here's some demographic breakdown. It says Biden has narrowed Trump's advantage in 2020 among white voters. Trump has 52% there, Biden is at 38. So they find that 14% advantage is narrower than the 21% that Trump won white voters by in 2020. With black voters, Biden is up 32, 57 to Trump's 25, 12% are going to Kennedy. In 2020, Biden carried black voters by 83%. So we've seen this in other polls where there's less racial polarization this time. Could Biden really make a 7-point gain with white voters? And could Trump really make a 26-point gain with black voters? To me, that seems like a bit much, but you never know. Voters under age 35 are breaking for Trump 46 to 37, 12 for Kennedy. Trump doing 9 points better with younger voters also seems a little bit surprising. They've got a quote here. It says, in a departure from the national voting patterns from 2016 and 2020, Ohio voters are now poised to split their tickets between president and Senate. Well, they didn't even cover the Senate yet. We'll skip over the familiar data that shows voters think they were financially much better off under Trump. And then we do have that U.S. Senate race. Incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown is at 50%. Republican challenger Bernie Moreno is at 45. Independents go for Brown 53 to 37. And Brown does get 10% of voters who plan to vote for Trump. Meanwhile, Moreno gets 2% of Biden voters. So I haven't heard too much out of Moreno. I think his campaign is still getting going. Meanwhile, Sherrod Brown is the well-known incumbent. He's got financial backing. He already hit the ground running. And I've heard a lot of people say that they can't believe people would vote for Trump and then cross over and vote for a Democrat in the Senate. There's always going to be a little bit of crossover. But could it get as high as 10%? I'm not sure, but there's going to be more Republican voters in general in this state. But I think it remains to be seen what Trump being on the ballot this time is going to do for the down ticket races. But I will say Brown being up by 5 seems a little bit of a stretch for me. And at the same time, Trump winning the state by 7 also seems like it might be a little bit of an underestimation. Now, there's a lot more data here. You can pause it if you'd like. Also, the link will be down below in the description. The last thing I'm going to point out on this page is down here in the generic congressional ballot. There, Republicans have a 5-point lead, 51 to 46. Independents there slightly break for the Republicans, 48 to 46. Now, a little bit more background about this pollster. This was from Marist College, and they started with 1,259 adults. Eventually, it got down to 1,137 registered voters, and the poll was conducted in early June, and we have a usual margin of error. And then if you go down to the next page, it does show you a breakdown of the demographic sample. You could spend a while on here if you wanted, but they did sample 40% Republicans, 34% Democrats, 25% independents. If you keep going down even further, it shows you the additional crosstabs and specific question wording. But let's take a closer look at Marist College. For that, we could get on 538. And ever since 538 removed the individual pages for the specific pollsters showing their polling history, we have to use the Wayback Machine to take a look at it. So here, Marist has an A. That's a pretty stellar rating. If you go down here, this shows you the bias of all their polls. One's on the left favor Democrats, one's on the right favor Republicans. So as usual, most pollsters are kind of all over the place and have some hits and some misses. And if you go down here, you can take a look at their individual polling accuracy. The column on the far right shows you how close they were to the actual result. So back in 2022, the state to focus on is going to be Ohio. The bottom two are for governor and U.S. Senate. So they had Governor Mike DeWine winning by 13 points, but he actually won by 25. So that is a 12-point underestimation of DeWine's support. That's pretty significant. It wasn't really consequential because DeWine won in a landslide. Now on the Senate side, that was closer, but they had J.D. Vance winning by 1 point. He actually won by 6.1. That's another 5.1 underestimation of support for Vance. So that's not really a good poll either, being off by 5 in a single-digit race. They did have the the outcome right, I'll give him that. But of the two most recent consequential polls for Ohio, I think it's pretty easy to say that Marist blew it. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to blow it next time, and they did fine in some other states, but overall, we have seen Trump underestimated in states like Ohio as well as the rest of the Rust Belt. Again, maybe they're spot on this time, but it's certainly possible there could be at least a 1 or 2 point underestimation of support for Trump or for Bernie Moreno. Now, you also have to consider by Election Day, things change, and somehow Biden surges and Moreno flops. But short of something dramatic like that, Ohio is a state that Trump has done very well in. Now, Sherrod Brown is the last Democrat standing. He's in the race of his life, and Bernie Moreno is not necessarily a rock star candidate. But here's a closer look at their final polling from back in the midterms. Again, they had the right result, but they pretty much had it way too close to call in the Senate, and they vastly underestimated DeWine for governor. Last time in 2020, Trump won the state by 8 points, but the aggregate polling did have him up by only 1 point. So the aggregate polling back then was a complete wipeout. But the questions we've got to ask are, what kind of inroads is Biden making with white non-college educated voters, and what kind of inroads is Trump making with black or Hispanic voters? This poll showed a 7-point swing toward Biden with white voters. If that actually panned out, that would be significant. It's the same with Trump and black voters making significant gains. But the problem is, if white voters shifted 7 points toward Biden, that would do a lot more for the statewide margins. It is a little tough to believe that voting bloc would move significantly toward Biden. Some movements is always going to be possible, but it looks like Trump is the overwhelming favorite for president. Meanwhile, in the Senate, the number of crossover votes is going to be highly debatable. Voters do know Sherrod Brown. He's got to really focus on running a populist type of campaign. If he gets tied to too many liberal or left-leaning social or cultural issues, I think that's going to be a problem, and that's definitely going to help Moreno. I think a lot of voters there don't really even know who Moreno is just yet. He won the primary, maybe they've heard his name a few times, but it's not going to be till after the 4th of July, and especially after Labor Day, until enough voters actually start paying attention. And we're going to follow what comes out between now and then. So I know some of you might completely disregard this poll, others might say this is a great poll. It's going to be up for you to decide, so let me know in the comments. What do you think about this poll? Is Trump actually running 12 points ahead of Bernie Moreno? How much crossover vote is there actually going to be? And what kind of campaign do you think Brown and Moreno has to run to be successful? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.